In other words, Darwin is still the king among them. And the theory of the chaos, that everything is nonsense, is the predominant. In other words, Darwin is still the king among them. And the theory of the chaos, that everything is nonsense, is the predominant view of all long-term evolutionary scientists. So I had the feeling that it could no longer be the case because there is a global consciousness, a global feeling that is born to the human species, and that perhaps there was a shift away from this, namely that evolution is seeking a way to continue to progress. And I asked two long-term scientists, a Frenchman, Leonid, and Erika Erdmann, who was the research assistant to Roger Sperry, who got the Nobel Prize for the consciousness birthed by the brain, to make a world survey of what the views were of long-term evolutionary scientists, and even to create a world association of long-term evolutionary scientists. And the result was indeed that you have now a growing number of scientists who look into the thousands of years to come, that the great new factor in evolution is the birth of human consciousness. That an animal doesn't know what is happening, but humans know, and that there is a global consciousness. In other words, we are like a child in the kindergarten. We are conscious that we're making an error, and that the consciousness of our error will lead us to a new further jump in evolution and civilization. Okay, now among these scientists, what is very interesting, you have astrophysicists as well as biologists who are very strong proponents of this. One is a Dutchman, Christian Van Duwe, who got the Nobel Prize for biology. The other one is a famous astrophysicist, Chesson. Chesson has come to the conclusion that on any planet in the universe where life form begin to appear, and so far there has none been found, because the mathematical conditions for life on any planet, the density, whatever you have, it is the biggest improbability figure mathematicians can put together. So that, but if you have a planet in the universe where life appears, there will finally be one species in this evolution who will have the brain and the consciousness.
Kijk, dat witte licht maken, dus je moet er heel erg sterk op zijn gezicht zetten.
That there will be a species that will gain the total knowledge of its planet and of a good part of the universe. And that species, from the moment it has its knowledge, as we have it here, we know practically everything we need to know about the planet. If this species continues to live on the preceding values which led to it, like competition, then it will be the end of evolution on this planet. And that the only way to progress in evolution is to adopt new values. And Christian de Duve, who is now with the Rockefeller Foundation, as a biologist looking the protozoas, the metazoas, and everything has come to the same conclusion. And he said, if one species has the total knowledge of its planetary home, it becomes practically the ruler of the planet. And if it does not change its value to preserve the home in which it lives, it is the end of evolution. Now this is now a big affair, and there will be a meeting of long-term evolutionary scientists. The 100 best long-term evolutionary scientists will meet in Seattle in the year 2000, just before the assembly of the heads of states, to give the heads of states a warning: you cannot continue to live on the values of the past. Now this is big, because that will change philosophy. This comes from some of the most intelligent people, because as Einstein said, you cannot solve a problem by using the same thinking which you had, which created the problem. So we have created the problem of the destruction of the Earth. Every 5 hours a species is disappeared. We are renuclearizing the planet, which it took millions of years to lose nuclearization for all kinds of idiotic purposes. So here is one that, in my opinion, this is one of the most promising views, because it is at the very highest level. And I've just been received a manuscript which I finished to read on how the religions try to find these rules from the heavens without knowing the heavens, and that now the scientists are converging with the religions, which they have never separated in the Far Eastern philosophies anyway.
Right.
But in the West we have separated it. There is now a convergence towards the absolute necessity of new values in order to continue evolution. That is one thing which is very, very big, and which will come out.
You
I'm
know,
very
Bill
far away,
Gates,
but I'm telling.
we're talking about a few basic things. Now, Bill Gates just published a book called Doing Business at the Speed of Thoughts. And he said speed is the new paradigm for the next century. And he talks about, yes, and we need faster feedback and in business and internet and all that kind of stuff. I think he oversees a basic thing, that if speed goes up, the risk of oscillation goes up. Yes, that you get very unstable cycles.
It's idiotic.
It's idiotic.
It's idiotic. There's no doubt about it.
Proclaiming speed as the new paradigm is idiotic, and it
Absolutely, sure.
and the stock market proves, because it's going up and down,
Absolutely, sure, exactly.
totally uncontrollable. What I think he's missing there is that speed, or any system where you have no validation, no value, where you re-evaluate what you're doing. Now this comes back to what I said before, that data is no information. A bit is the only information is a byte. What's between the two is validation. Is this piece of data, does it have value? Yes or no? And that is where we have to. So one solution is to say, for some purposes it doesn't have value, in the sense it doesn't have money. It has value but no money.
You see, this is now a society in which money was a great thing, in which at the beginning capitalism was a great thing, much better than communism, because the resources of the earth were practically unexploited and unlimited. And for all practical purposes, I come to the point that I hope that more humans will die. I have a daughter who's an ocean biologist. She says, look, Dad, if only the human species could disappear, so that the other species can continue to develop. This is very serious, because the human species has become a menace to the Earth. Since 1980, since the Ozonosphere Conference and the World Climate Conference in '79, for all practical purpose, while from 45 to 70 it was humanism, every human problem on Earth. From 70 on it became human and the environment, and from 1980 on now it is the Earth which is number one and humanity number two. So that this is, we put the whole evolution in peril, there's no doubt about it. Look, a species disappearing every 5 hours, that's by the year, I calculated by the year 2050, it's going to be 50,000 species disappearing from this planet. We are today, on the 16th of October, will be 6 billion people. We were 2.5 billion in 1952. We missed the population explosion because we went to the poor countries to save their children, and without telling the parents that they need 6 or 8 children to take care of them later on. And when we discovered, the young populations were there. And now the latest forecast, when I called because my information source is the United Nations. I don't trust anyone else. It's the only objective source of information on any problem in the universe. And I found out that we're going to, between now and the year 2050, we're going to go from 6 billion to almost 9 billion people. That is 1/2 more. Can you imagine?
But can the world feed them? Is there enough food in the world to feed them?
Of course not. But I make the point that governments do not look into this. You see, again, the future is not even considered in government. There are only 2 countries on earth where they have a minister of the future, Japan and Germany, and they did it in the last 2 years. The future, they are looking for the next elections, and that's the end. Who cares about the elections? And we today, at the speed at which it goes, we are imperiling the whole future of this planet. My daughter, who's an ocean biologist, she said, look, Dad, in view of the fact that the ozonosphere is as big as China, if the ultraviolet rays, which create already incredible numbers of cancer, skin cancer, if the diatoms and the plankton on the sea and the ocean do not survive the ultraviolet rays, we're going to lose 2/3 of the oxygen of the planet. I didn't even know that 2/3 of the oxygen came from the seas and oceans and not from trees only. So this is a completely new history. And of course, some governments are beginning to be scared of it, but they don't know what to do. So we have Maurice Strong in the Rio de Janeiro conference created an Earth Council to look into this. And by the way, this is something very, very interesting. Now I have perhaps at least one solution of promoting the good information, because the Earth Council in Costa Rica, which will move now to the grounds of the University for Peace, these people make interviews over whatever system you have, where, for example, I can answer the questions of students from Thailand, and the results apparently are phenomenal. So they have now a system of getting directly in contact with students, having professors from various countries around the world to speak about the climate and about the deterioration of the Earth. That is something which might be interesting.
Yeah.
I would keep this in mind.
In the 60s, when I had my children, or in the 70s later, there was this thing in Holland like, okay, there's too many children on the world, let's not do it. So the population growth in the West, in Germany, in Holland, and
It's going down, yes.
went down. It went
Yeah.
down dramatically.
Yeah.
Now we're facing the fact that we went down too fast.
Yeah,
And now we have to,
yeah.
yes, because it really becomes a problem.
Yeah.
So now we have that problem. So for me, that proved one thing, is that if the people believe they can do something about it, it might work very fast. If we, all of us, would just came to the conclusion that maybe 3 meals a day, or all these extra calories would not be a good idea, it would change very fast.
Okay, now this doesn't apply to the poor countries because they have no communications, you see. Now we try it by the International Radio for Peace to have radio, but again, in India, who has a radio, who has a television, you know. It's growing very fast, but the people who should be attained by this are not attained.
They can be done through village communication centers.
Yeah.
If they're not totally rural, you can
No.
have the extension of cyber cafes.
Well,
Eventually.
you see, in the poor countries, the only effect it has a little effect, because now, in the last year, the population increase was only 78 million against 80 million the year before. So it's going down, but it's going, you see, in social affairs, in business affairs, it goes very quickly, but in social affairs it goes too slowly. That is the problem.
Yeah, but is that
So
true?
that-
Because what he says, and you say communications. That's an important thing. Now I have seen that. I always think that the small problem of Amsterdam is the world's problem, because we have all these. Schat, als ze er niet liggen. Wat zoek je? Batterij?
Weekly or monthly gatherings. How long would it take to reach everybody in the world? Would be an interesting exercise. How long would it take to reach 99% of the world's population with a single message?
Well-
Given today's technology.
Dus moet je even kijken. Ik
Well,
denk
I
dat het
think
goed is, maar
the,
die komt er niet net
It's
uit.
just a theoretical question, but the idea is
No,
that
it's
I
not
think-
a theoretical question, because you can ask this question at the
Schat, we hebben al die tekst
International
gegeven.
Communications Union. They have it, and they will tell you that you have vast areas,
Ik denk dat je
mountain
die even moet
areas,
kijken,
especially in
deze.
the poor countries which are not reached, and these are the biggest population. And then again, it depends what kind of. The Earth said, wait a minute, your population statistics are wrong, because when I look what you take from my Earth, in all your things which very often are useless, junk in every direction. The Western society has become the greatest junk production on earth. So the Earth says, look, now you are 1.2 billion people in the rich countries, and you are 4.4 billion people in the poor countries. But that's the wrong statistics, because each one of you in the rich countries consumes 30 times what they consume in the poor countries. So I multiply 1.2 by 30, so that means that in my books, from what I am being destroyed, You are 36 billion people in the rich countries and only 4.4 billion in the poor.
That's another way to look at it. By the way, do you believe those statistics? I mean, I just give you the example of Bhutan. When the United Nations was formed, and to qualify for a nation, you had to have like 1 million people. So when they started, they said we have 1 million people. And every year it was 1.2 and 1.3 and whatever. A few years ago they counted and they came to 600,000.
Well, if you want from me the story on the population problem, that you and I will be here for 2 hours.
But do you believe that the statistics are true, that there are 6 billion
Well,
people?
they are better than they ever were before, but they were absolutely insufficient until 1952. The only countries on earth who had decent statistics were the Western countries and their colonies. If you were a colony, the French did it well in the various things. And then we discovered in 1952, I remember I wanted one day to know what is the population of Iran. Nobody knew. It's between 15 and 20 million people. I said, what? You don't know the population of Iran? No, nobody knows. It's a guesstimate. So we hired the whole French demographers group, because demography was invented by another man in the 19th century in the school of Sauvé, had the best demographers on earth. We hired the whole thing. And then the first thing they did was to get a guesstimate of what the world population was on real statistics in the Western countries, and more or less what was being guessed for various countries. And they came to a total in 1952 of 2.5 billion people. So we created a population commission, and we had then a series of 4 world population conferences to look that every government looks into this. And on the basis, after a couple of years, we got all governments on earth to have the same demographic census at the same time in the same year, and following a schema which was given by the UN. But even China came to see us about 15 years ago, and by saying, look, we would like the United Nations to really make now a serious survey of the population from China, because they tell you the truth, we don't really know. So the pockets now have been practically eliminated. The biggest thing which was missing at the time was statistics on fertility and mortality, because the population explosion was attributed to women having more children, and it was wrong. The fertility of women, even in poor countries, went down, but very, very slowly. What happened is that the mortality rate of the children at birth fell from 34 per thousand to 12 per thousand. In other words, by eliminating smallpox, by having the World Health Organization getting in, with more sanitation, the 0.4 problem of President Truman. We went there to save children, which was correct. But it didn't occur to anyone, for lack of knowledge, to tell the parents you don't need 6 to 8 children in order to have 2 left for your social security, because there was none, and to till the land. And that lasted for about 5 years until this was discovered, and by that time the damage was done, because once a population is young, it is highly reproductive. So that then we had the first world. I could tell you stories endless.
Okay, let's come back to communication.
Exactly. So, voilà. So let's go back to
Communication,
your
we were
understanding.
talking, and Ed says there, yes, village communication. Now what I've seen is that communication, like information, means nothing if it doesn't have a value. I mean,
Of
we
course.
can read newspapers and newspapers and newspapers until we believe that this one book or this one article has a value, that we attach a personality with it. Say, oh, that's the chief editor, or that is a famous guy. It means nothing. It feels like the information stream in the world lacks that. We lack role models. We lack.
That's correct.
Yeah. Why is that?
Well, for a very simple reason. It is because information is paid by advertisement. Look at the newspaper. I was absolutely sick when I saw in the plane coming from Costa Rica that the Allgemeine Frankfurter Zeitung is twice as big as the New York Times. Who reads this? This is junk. And if you take an airline magazine, it's advertisement every second page. And the people look at the advertisement, and every article is not produced to tell the people that they should have less junk. On the contrary.
But if you have role models in television, as the major newscasters, the Peter Jennings, the
Yeah, but
Ted
the role
Koppels,
model the
are they
Western world
becoming
knows is
role
Peter
models?
Arnett, hanging out of a hotel
who are the role models then?
See, the whole system, as a matter of fact, from a, let's say from a philosophical point of view, you had this famous American psychologist Skinner, who said consciousness and the mind does not exist. All you have to do is you take, you give the people a certain information to obtain a certain result.
Yeah, but
If you tell the
that's-
military that they should defeat the Russians, they will do it. The consciousness or non-conscious are doing it, that doesn't count. And the whole United States system is still on the Skinner system. That's how advertisement was born at the time, the very stuff advertisement. I can tell you, to be very honest, but I will never do it in a speech. In my opinion, the situation is practically hopeless. This earth is going to the grounds. And it is for
Where's
a
your
very...
optimism?
Well, I will not say it.
Yeah, but
it
yet you
alwa-
pick up the dirt on the street. So
Yes,
you act
but
as if,
I know-
as if it makes a difference.
But I know that for the dirt I pick up at the street, you have guys in the big corporations who are going to
Who
produce
don't give a
1,000
shit
times
and they
worse.
put it
But
on the
Robert,
floor
there is the
anyway.
globalization of consciousness.
Ah.
There is a growing awareness and consciousness, and there are
I know.
events that are.
But it's much too slow. It is much too slow. That is the whole thing. There you have an absolute point. It is in new productions, in new marketings, in new everything. It goes very rapidly.
Too
And
slow
the
for
social
who?
consciousness is too slow.
Too slow
Well,
for you.
Yeah, but we
you
could-
have one thing that goes up and the other thing that goes that way.
I think Barbara Hubbard has.
Uh,
Barbara Hubbard has some of the answers to that. That breakdown precedes breakthrough. That it looks like, it may look like it's breaking down,
Yeah.
and in fact something new is emerging. And so I retain my optimism, even though it may look bad. In the total context and understanding about how evolution operates, breakdown precedes breakthrough, and we're approaching critical mass, and it seems to be coinciding with the
Maybe.
year 2000.
But that's not what he's saying. He's
According to Budowski, who was the first Secretary General of the Audubon Society and all this, he has gone through this inside out and he has come to the conclusion that only a disaster will wake up people.
And we're approaching that disaster.
Exactly.
Yeah, but even if we I don't believe we're approaching the disaster. But I'm looking at,
Strong.
World War III would be a disaster.
but don't believe
Well,
in
we
World
are
War
in-
III. It's not going to
It's
happen.
coming.
World War III. We are in World War III against the Earth every day. My God.
Okay, so
Yeah.
what to do? Now, what I see is that if we go back to very small scale communications,
Well,
family.
I go to the big scale.
Yeah, but
But
that's
the
why.
accumulation of the small scale.
In my opinion, the only thing that can help us is the heads of state in the year 2000. And to tell these people you remain in session until you put this house in order. Those are the people. And the little people, it's nice, it's beautiful. This whole session of the thing is beautiful, but it ain't going to change the world. You have to look at the sources of power.
So-
and you know, and I can make your prediction is that the whole capitalist society is now going to break down as shit. Because as Toynbee has shown it, that anyone who believes in the continuation of his power is dead. The capitalist Western societies is dead. The same way as the Roman Empire, the whole thing. And they want to stay in power, they do not want to change anything, and the only way is that they're going to collapse. You mark my prediction. You can remember the day on which I made
Well,
it.
even so.
Well,
even so-
okay, even so, I'm going
We're
to
gonna-
go, and I'm going to sell my books and produce my books
Yeah,
and
yeah,
write
yeah, absolutely.
1,000 more ideas. And I
Okay.
will do this every day.
So
But
you
if
do it
ask
and
me-
I do it and it works.
well, it does not work.
Well, I
Look,
disagree.
from the moment I came to the United Nations, the situation today is much better in certain areas, but much worse. It is much better in all the humanistics areas. It's even better in the political area. There are no more international wars. I can make you a long lecture on this. But what is still not understood with the necessary understanding, it is that we are busting up our home, the earth.
Okay, so
And
there,
the
there we have
business doesn't want to understand it and cannot understand
No, but-
it because it is not reflected in the stock market.
But Mr. Mueller, you have
Yeah.
on your chest,
Yeah.
that's an Indian piece of jewelry.
Yeah.
Yes? It has the turquoise, that's
Yeah.
the earth, it has the wings of the eagle. Yes?
Yeah.
So there is a connection. That is a symbol. Now, the Indians seemingly for thousands of years. And some tribes in southern Africa for hundreds of thousands of years have survived in balance with nature. Yes?
Yep.
We have to regain that balance, which is not an easy thing, as we have seen with the birth control in the Western world, because we did it too fast. So it's a very complex thing. But if we come, like in those days it was, don't make too many children. What I'm looking for is like we need international cooperation, otherwise we bust the world. Yes, I agree there.
I agree.
One of the concepts I'm talking now is family nations. In Europe, each country has his neighbors and his friends, like America is our friend or whatever, but we also have family nations. Holland has a family nation called Suriname. We have a family nation called Indonesia.
Sure.
Yes, we have a new family nation, it's called Turkey, because we get a lot of Turkish people or Moroccan people. What I'm trying to see is if we can get this family idea to start.
It's the human family, the
Yes?
awareness and consciousness of the human family.
I'm not talking about consciousness. I'm not talking about awareness. Those are words. I say, if we start doing business, you start doing business with your family. Yep. If we promote tourism, we could promote it to go to Tonga, but our family lives in Suriname. Our family lives in that sense. Be practical. What can we do to help a country like Suriname or a country like the...
Well, I'm telling you that if you help Suriname and this with all the air transport, you might help people, but you destroy the world. What do you think these airplanes do out there? You overfly the US cities, there's pollution everywhere.
So why don't we...
So that's not the solution either.
It's only 8 days by boat,
Yes,
yes? And there's no longer boats to Suriname, not...
Exactly.
Yeah?
The air transport alone, at the speed at which it growth is able by itself, the packaging industry and airplane industry alone are capable of destroying this earth. And they don't know how many more planes to think. The airplanes are filled, you cannot imagine. And now the Americans are gaping and go to Costa Rica to look Costa Rica. And in 20 years they will have finished Costa Rica. There is no leadership and there's not a single head of state who would know this. And the trouble is that you know it, I know it, but you find, I've asked Ted Turner, who's an old friend of mine. He created CNN because I suggested to him 30 or 40 years ago when he won the World Cup, when he said, what can I do to save the earth? Because by running the World Cup, I saw that the seas and oceans were polluted. He was a young man, he came with his mystery to the UN, and I said the most important thing is to give the world information about its global condition. And he did CNN, and he made a fortune, and he gave $1 billion to the United Nations. I've just written to him a letter.
But can we find, Mr. Mueller, can we find simple things? Now I'll give you one simple...
Sure you can, but you cannot, you have to get to the people who do this.
But I'll give one solution. Suppose that traveling to Costa Rica is limited to people that stay 2 weeks or more.
That's fine.
Would that help?
But they will not do it.
No, but would it help?
Of course, but look, I do it even better. From now on, I'm not going to travel anymore at all. This is my last conference. I've decided it.
Yeah, but could you?
I will decide it. I will not travel anymore.
Mr. Mueller, could we convince the government of Costa Rica, the sensible people there, that they should not give visa, or they should not allow any tourist that doesn't stay 2 weeks?
Sure, but they will not do it because they are they are propagandized by advertisement that to get the people in will bring in money. Well,
yes, but if they stay for 2 weeks,
but if
yes,
it will not work because nobody will take it. No airline will ever accept this. The U.S. government would be ready to.
But the Costa Rica government issues the visas. And there was a long time that you could only go to China, and there was a minimum of 7 days and this and that.
Sure, look, if you want ideas on how to control it, I give you 2,000. I have 3,000, I have 4,000. But the one thing is that the people who are in power have a different view. That's all. You have.
But you were in power. You were Assistant Secretary General of the United Nations.
Exactly. Well,
you were in power. You have instigated all kinds of...
And whenever you wanted to do something, the U.S. put the thing, and now they killed the UN altogether. There's no doubt about it. The UN has become a danger because we got away with the World Climate Conference in 1979. That was 20 years ago, and the climate issue is now in the press only in the last 2 years. Believe me,
I don't believe you, because if I believe what you say, we should stop.
The US has now become a decadent country.
I agree on that.
Absolutely. And it will be punished like the Roman Empire, like all others. The British has already gone down. With this Commonwealth, the Russians has come down, and capitalism was excellent at the beginning, but it doesn't correspond anymore to the needs of the fact that this earth is being destroyed. Now, one thing you might wish to see is that Maurice Strong, who has spent his life on the environment, he has just finished a book in which, apparently according to his wife confidentially, he's also convinced that the earth is coming to an end. So that might be another very high-level source where he can warn governments that something is going wrong. You have to see, look at all these shitty hotels. What is unneeded in there? You cannot imagine. I refuse even to go to big hotels. Why do you need all these things?
You live in a country, Costa Rica, where there still live Mayas or people, indigenous Indians, that believe that in the year 2012, according to Arguelles, the world will come to some kind of major shift. Do you feel that's happening?
Well, it depends who speaks. The climatologists tell you that by the year 2020, the ocean currents will change direction. And you have the Niño, we have rain in Costa Rica, which the people have never seen in centuries. So that maybe this climatic change, which will be there. The Mayas, as a matter of fact, the cosmology of the Maya is pretty close to the cosmology of the United Nations. That is a great surprise, except that they take the couple as the basic cosmic unit and not the individual. Because in the couple you have all the antecedents that go into the couple, and from the couple then it goes to the children. But otherwise the cosmology of the United Nations, namely the whole Earth plays from the infinitely large to the infinitely small, and our human family, our place in time, the miracle of individual life, that is the Mayan cosmology, and that has emerged from the United Nations. So the only thing I would tell you is that to run for parliament, to a European parliament, you do the right thing. In other words, this has to be taken up at the political level, at the highest level. If I were younger, I would run for parliament in France, or in Europe, I would certainly run for parliament. And I even run for Secretary General, being too old and being a Frenchman, which was excluded, but I wanted to give the proof that a global citizen should also be considered. And I gave all my plan of what I would do if I were Secretary General of the UN. So that I think the best thing you can do is really to run for the European Parliament, because then you get an equal. Then you can speak to people who are really in power. And the Parliament is even better because the Parliament is above the executive. For example, here from the Hague conference, I'm very glad to have obtained one resolution, or one recommendation, is that the United Nations Parliamentary Assembly should be created. Because the European idea of Robert Schuman would not have succeeded if it had rested only on the executive. The executive's institutions don't want to change. And with the parliament, these people were at a higher level, and they saw that there was an interest for the total community, and it was the European Parliament that in large extent forced the executives into the European Union, and then got even now direct elections. But the best thing that could ever happen to the United Nations would be that parliamentarians, you see, parliamentarians are not even informed about the statistics of the UN. They keep them in the Ministries of Foreign Affairs. But the thing is, look, this is one of the lousiest social and political and economic systems on a very good planet. That would be my conclusion. And you have more thinking about producing new candles or new menus than you have on having a different political, economic and social system. Nobody is involved in this very much. Very, very few people.
As an individual, in just, I think, more than 500 Euro Parliament, do you think it makes sense? Can you have an impact as a single person? We just discussed Brother David, how he had an impact.
Well, you could have an impact. Well, he hasn't changed the world either.
He has changed me.
Look, well, that's fine. But
and he has changed other people.
That's not 6 billion people.
No, but you told me that in Austria, many people believed he was right.
Sure, but if you will see, the people go and they buy more, they go to the supermarkets, and they do not reduce their consumption in any way. In the United States, there is now a big movement on more simple and frugal lives. It's one of the biggest new tendencies. But again, it is too small.
Voluntary simplicity.
Yeah, voluntary simplicity. So that is now for the first time, it's considered by the public opinion surveys that this is the biggest new social movement in the last 5 years. So at long last, but you know, Duane Elgin wrote his book already 15 years ago, and the people in Seattle there, they started this 25 years ago.
But I look on the street and I see, for instance, now smart cars, you know, these smaller European cars. That is an example of that trend. Yes?
Sure.
You see people saying we don't need these big things
Well,
anymore.
you should have seen the cars they had in the 60s, with the ships they had, with the big fins. Today I saw one which was an antique, which was in the street, of course. But at the same time, if you look at the automobile production on Earth, it's certainly worse than at the time when they had the big fins. You see, all this population increase, and if you look at the television sales, the biggest is in the poor countries now, you see. And the Marlboro cigarettes have difficulties in the United States. In Costa Rica, you buy Marlboro cigarettes because you have a lottery ticket for where you can buy a lottery, you see. And the fruit juices have disappeared because the children want Coca-Cola. So what can you do? And the Coca-Cola company has put in drugs until the people were accustomed. In my public speeches, I will never touch a drop of Coca-Cola in my entire life. Because I remember at the UN there was a rule that any product which contained drugs had to be reported to the UN. And the Americans refused because Coca-Cola had for years drugs until the people were accustomed to take it. And then they said now Coca-Cola has no longer any drugs. And I would very much like to have an analysis made. I would be surprised.
Okay.
You know?
Thank you, Mr. Mueller. Listen, you want to eat or something?
Huh?
You want your
They don't sell it. Let me see. I will give you the information.
Okay.
Barbara has all
You
this.
can email me.
She's the promoter. I'm not.
Excellent.
Okay,
I
well.
still use an old typewriter or
Yeah.
a computer. But
Well, you see, it doesn't matter. I believe it doesn't matter whether you use the old typewriter. People say with a computer we could write faster. It's the brain that
it's
makes
the
us
brain.
think.
That's what
I never
say.
was I type with 2 fingers. That's all this.
It's
we
the,
believe.
it's the idea that's more important than the technology.
And
But
you
it
know,
helps. There's no doubt.
It helps. It helps.
It helps.
Yeah, I write a lot of books.
You don't have to correct things like this. But it is, you see, it is what is important. It is that we are now on the eve of a new century and millennium, so that there's a lot of thinking going on all over the world. It's bubbling, and we might see a kind of revolution of thinking. You see, precisely, we spoke this morning to young people from 51 countries, and they spoke more about the Earth than I heard in the whole The Hague conference. The word Earth was pronounced only in 2 sentences by Federico Mayor. They are all still sticking at the solution of the human problems.
Yeah. Well,
You see?
let me give you one more example. In Amsterdam, I founded Homeless Television. For about $1,000, maybe $2,000, I gave them airtime and a camera and a little edit unit. And I gave it to the homeless. In 3 weeks' time, they were able to make their own programs. And now, Homeless Television, 1 hour a week on Saturday night, prime time, it works. Done by homeless, they go to the mayor and they say, we've heard this problem or that problem. I was so enthused by that.
My conclusion to you is the following, and I've been in this for 50 years and considered one of the greatest world observers because it was my job in the United Nations. I've always coordinated everything. I've created 11 of the 35 specialized agencies to solve problems. I have a list of records of which I can be very proud. Like these 51 students this morning, I didn't know that I created it 25 years ago. I'd completely forgotten about it. But the one thing I can tell you is that the 2 absolute major problems are, number 1, to look who is at the source of power. Who are the rulers of the present planet in business, in militaries, or in countries like the United States? And to convince them is a hell of a time. That is number 1. And also number 2, to understand that we have to look far in the future. Because for me to go from the next century to the millennium in the foundation was a revelation. And they all come to the conclusion it cannot continue as it is. It cannot continue. And this is why I recommend now that in every government there should be a minister of the future. Even in the United Nations, the FAO has future estimates, population and so on. But I want now to have a main commission of the future in the General Assembly, where all this comes together. Now Europe is good, because Europe has created the Commissioner for the Future. It's a woman, I am in contact with her. I do not know if she has the right approach, but Europe has a Commissioner for the Future. And that is very essential. The future and to convince the actual sources of power of today. Those are the two most important things. And for you to run for European Parliament, I think this is your best and most direct way. In my opinion. That is it.
Whatever.
And then you can launch ideas by the dozen. And if I were you, my wife on the 11th of July '94, when we fell in love, she said, look, you have so many ideas, why don't you write them down? And you have 2,000 ideas by the year 2000. Well, I finished already 6 months ago with the 2,000 ideas. But the incredible thing is that the people are beginning to implement it. They open a page, oh, that's the one that I always thought this, and then they begin. So that here you can multiply the effect of the individual idea by having many ideas. And someone say, well, I'm not interested in that. But this is interesting. And I'm sending it to the wife of the Secretary General, I'm sending it to the wives of heads of states, because the heads of states have no time to read. And I said, please read this, and then in the middle of the night, wake up your husband and say, look, this is what you should do. So I rushed down to embrace him because he was fulfilling the dream of Bhutan. The very Secretary General who always said to me, Robert, there will be no peace on this planet if we do not have a new education. And then the Secretary General asked me to sit down with Don Rodrigo and to create the University for Peace. And then 3 days before my retirement, from the United Nations, in the Governing Council, he proposed that I should become the Chancellor Emeritus of the University for Peace for $1 a year, and he owes me $13. I have some important things to say to you regarding the subjects you are taking up here. The first one is I learned from scientists that the development of the brain of the human species is very fundamentally dependent on the relation between the mother and the child in her womb. It is what the mother teaches the child already. It's the dreams of the mother for the child which becomes true. I remember one day when I said this to the wife of the Minister of Health of Chile, who came back from the WHO, she said, Mr. Mueller, I decided that my child would be a son, and that he would be the greatest pianist in Chile. So every day I sat down, played piano for him, and today he's the greatest pianist in Chile. And I'm sure that my mother, who was a poor orphan, when their father of 5 girls were killed and squeezed by a train, that when she got married, she was not married with the man she dreamed of. So she put into me the dreams she had. And what science has discovered is that for all species on this planet, there is a period after birth where the brain continues to develop, to exclude certain things and to believe in certain things. For a cat, it lasts 2 months. For a monkey, it lasts 2 months. For a cat, 5 days. And for a human being, it is more than 5 years. And I always, when I learned this, I got the answer to my own life. Because I always ask myself, why do you have these very special beliefs? And then I remembered that it was all determined when I was 4 or 5 years old. Because I remember that I was walking around as a child saying, we spoke a German dialect in Lorraine, das Leben ist göttlich, das Leben ist göttlich, life is divine. And people said, how strange that this little boy says this. Because for me, life was something incredible, a true miracle. The second one is that I couldn't believe the border. In my hometown, why are the people on the other side whose name is Mueller, Schneider, Becker, and so weiter, why are they different? Why are they enemies? The birds, the clouds, the sun goes over the border. Why am I not supposed to come? And then to see pictures of my father, once in a German, once in a French uniform. And to learn from my grandfather, who changed 5 times nationality without leaving his village. French, German, French, German, and French. What is all this? And another factor was that my father and people were surprised that each time I saw an old person, I took off my cap. My father said, we do this because they know so much about life. And today, I'm an elder who has learned so much about life. So I was dreaming of peace. I wanted to get rid of this war. I wanted life to be a miracle. I love nature, a cherry tree, a hen that flew into my arms when I called her. And this is why for every one of my grandchildren I planted a cherry tree. And all this determined the rest of my life. The education then came. Education suppressed it all. There was never in the French school any word about peace or about friendship with Germans. There was practically nothing about nature, and there was practically nothing about the world. It was France, 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 and France again. And to teach us to be ready to kill the Germans on the other side. Spirituality totally out, because in France spirituality is the separation between church and state, because the young French revolutionaries, when they killed both the king and his allies, the church and the nobleman. And so all this disappeared. I couldn't get it. And then one day at the end of the high school, when I was supposed to make the final exam, before entering university, baccalaureate, the Germans walked in. And I'll never forget the tall guy who was there and said, everything the French told us were lies. They are decadent, we are now going to teach you. And then we had to learn the main cities of Germany, the main heroes of Germany, the main victories of Germany. It was Deutschland, Deutschland über alles, aber France, France über alles. Came the war, twice a refugee since we lived on the border. Then the danger of being incorporated in the German army, which neither my father nor I wanted. I had the most incredible adventures. Finally, I was able to cross the border. And finally, I was almost arrested again by the Germans, by the Gestapo, which had arrested me the first time. And then I went to the hills to fight with the war. And when I came home, protected by God from being killed, the closest was a bullet that went through my pants, luckier than one of the 2 young people here who got 6 bullets in Littleton. I learned that my father had spent a year in prison because I had refused to go to the German army. And he asked me, what are you going to do now? And I said, I'm going to work for peace. So that does not exist. There are no peacemakers on this planet. There's no profession for peacemaker. And I said, well, that's what I'm going to do. So I went to Strasbourg to get the doctorate of law. And in the middle of this, in a train one day when I had nothing to do, I remembered seeing a poster that would give to students the prize of the French United Nations Association for writing the best essay on world government. So I said, well, that's addressed to you. How would you govern the world? Big job, but I wrote it, sent it in, won, and entered the United Nations. Now, on spirituality, one thing happened very important during the war. Because I remember that once we found in the mountains, when we entered the village, the peasants said to us that something happened in a big farm which was burned, and we went there and we found all the prisoners which the Germans had evacuated from the city of Lyon and burned them alive. You could see nails in their jaws. You could see a barbed wire around their hands. And our commander, who we had just made 10 prisoners of Frenchmen who had accompanied the Germans, decided to kill them. We put them during this thing. You had the system of putting their heads into water until they suffocated to get the truth, to betray others. And of all the 10, when they were taken to the place where they had dug their grave, I observed these people. Some of them had been heroic during the tests. They scratched the earth. They didn't want to get killed. And there was one woman who walked without any problem, just praying. And in the middle of the Ave Maria, she fell into the tomb. And this was the example which brought me back to spirituality. What is it that gives a person who's going to die what this woman had and all the other 9 prisoners did not? And then in the United Nations, my spirituality right from the beginning started with the creation of the Parliamentary Society, the creation of the World Conference on Religions and Peace, the creation of a meditation room, and so on and so forth. And then the incredible example of Dag Hammarskjöld, who entered the UN as a rational economist and became a mystic. When he died, we found in his bedroom Thomas à Kempis. The whole markings he wrote is a journey from a rational economist to becoming a mystic, a dialogue with God. And he said, among others, that the longest journey of a human being is the journey inside, as we have been said here. And then later I had the privilege to work with U Thant, a Buddhist, not believing in God, but probably the most spiritual individual I've met in my life. He said to me often, Robbie, I cannot understand you Christians to go to a church for 1 hour on Sunday. I am spiritual from the moment I awake until the evening. And one day, when I joined him, I said, do you have any unfulfilled dreams? He said, yes, the United Nations doesn't make sense without China. Secondly, I always hear political and economic speeches and never a spiritual voice. And I want to have an education, a university that would educate the children as we are educated here by the whole world in humanity. And then I said, okay, let's do it. So we got China back, to the great surprise of the Americans who thought that it would never be done. And I was invited later with Lifetime by Chou and Lai to give the thanks that I had started this battle and won it. And then I said, you want to hear a spiritual voice? Very simple. We have an observer state in the United Nations, the Pope, because they have a little territory called the Holy See. So we invited the Pope, and we had all the cardinals, everybody there. He gave a great speech, and when he left, he gave me his cross. I wore it especially today just to remember this story. And on the education, as I said before, then when Rodrigo Carasso came to the United Nations, that was the fulfillment of U Thant. So my whole life was transformed by the war experience and by the United Nations. And when I look now, looking at the second subject, namely world peace. When I look at the last 50 years since 1945, when the United Nations came into being, I see the following periods, and that is very important. The first one is from 45 to 1970. It was the most incredible and intensive period of human history to deal with humanism. We should have no war. We should not let the little children die when they are born, as was the case in so many countries. We should have well-being and fulfillment of life. We should have human rights for all groups, children, etc., the indigenous people, everything, human rights. We should prolong longevity, and it was prolonged from 40 to 60 years in the poor countries, and from 60 to 72 years in the rich countries. We should decolonize, which was done in 40 years instead of 150, as I was told as a young man. We should finish apartheid, and it was finished too, and we should see the end of the Cold War. That those were the dreams, totally humanistic. There was not a word about the earth, not a word. In the meantime, by helping the children not to die in the poor countries, and not telling the mothers that they didn't need 6 to 8 children to have 2 at the end of that, we created the world population problem. It was we who went to the poor countries and created this explosion. And then in 1970, the ambassador of Sweden came to see me when I was Secretary of the Economic and Social Council. Mr. Mueller, something is going wrong on this planet. We are the most advanced industrial country. We have acid rain of our trees. We have pollution of our lakes. We must do something. We tried with a conference on the World Biosphere in UNESCO in '68. It had no effect. Can you help us? And I said to him, well, you have no effect with biosphere because there's not a single head of government who knows what the biosphere is. You have to talk to the people. So we decided, I proposed to him to have a world conference. We retained the word environment, which was in between biosphere and pollution. And this changed the whole world. From 1972 on, from the Stockholm Conference, the priorities of the world were humanity, but also what is around us, the environment, to begin to take care of nature and of our environment. In 1972, there was not a single minister of the environment on this planet. In Stockholm, there were 2 heads of states. 20 years later, in '92, in Rio de Janeiro, there were 114 heads of states. Every government had a minister of the environment, and there were 8,000 people from non-governmental environmental organizations. So that was the second period. And then since 1980, we have a third period, with the conference on the ozonosphere, where there's a hole in the ozonosphere that protected this planet from ultraviolet rays, a hole which is now as big as China. Suddenly the ultraviolet rays came down, have produced innumerable skin cancers, and above all, if the plankton and the microscopic diatoms of the seas and oceans will not survive, are killed by the ultraviolet ray, we are going to lose 2/3 of the oxygen of this planet. And then I convened the first conference on climate because we were bombarded by climatologists. The climate of this planet is going to hell. We convened them in '79, and we were told that around the year 2020, the main currents of this planet will change directions as a result of the warming of the atmosphere, air pollution, and so on. So that since 1980, we have a third period in which the Earth is number 1 and humanity number 2. Can you imagine? And the problems of the first period are not even solved because of the population explosion. I remember at the time we had 300 million handicapped in the world, today we're 500 million. The number of illiterate children is still the same today as it was when we started with this humanistic period. So we have incredible global problems which have arisen in all this. Now, one great advantage was developed during all this is that the United Nations made a total inventory of our planet, and science went into the infinitesimal large and the infinitesimal small, the infinite large and infinite small. We have today, at the eve of the next century, for the first time in the entire human history, a total picture of our universe, of our planet, Earth. We have a total picture of humanity. Until 1952, we didn't even know how many people lived on this planet. Then we discovered about 2.5 billion. Today, on the 12th of October, we'll be 6 billion. In the year 2050, we are going to be 8,900,000,000, 1/2 more than today. When you imagine this. So this picture has been given, and for the first time now, humanity can begin to understand this and to administer it well. And this is where, with the discovery of Roger Sperry, of the fact that the brain produces consciousness, It is this global consciousness which has become the new factor on this planet. We have global arms, we have extended our arms with machines, our legs with automobiles, our eyes with telescopes and microscopes, our hearing with telephones and so on. We have a global brain today. We have the beginning also of a global heart. And it is the concern for nature, and it is the concern for the poor people around the world, which is the beginning of the global heart. But we do not have as yet a global soul. Why? Because it is business that globalized itself. Government globalized itself timidly in the United Nations, not really making out of the United Nations an instrument for global administration, but at least they did something. And spirituality, the religions didn't do anything. They all kept to their, we have the total truth. It was a difficulty to get even the leaders to speak together. And we do not have this global spirituality which I advocated in one of my first books, New Genesis, the need for a global spirituality.